Alright, here goes take 3. I recorded this thing twice already and it did not work. Okay, so I'm going to be doing the code part of the presentation. So first I'm just going to import the regular IOStream, strings, and CMAT because I'll be using the square root. Using namespace std, int, and return 0. Basic setup for C++ program. Alright, next I'm going to declare my variables. So I'm going to declare these things as float because I might end up with decimal and I want to be able to properly analyze the decimal rather than rounding it up to an integer or anything along that line. I have this couple of string values that I'm going to be using to tell the user some stuff later on. But I might not get too much into details with those. Alright, so here I have a long string that I will refer to later on because I don't want to be typing the same string over and over again. So I'm just going to, just count this int invalid. Alright, here I'm telling the user, alright, enter the equation in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Here I'm asking the user enter a. Alright, next I'm going to send a. Now this piece of code, I think it's a bit important if we know it in the sense that if a user presses a letter instead of a number, so if the person presses D, then that wouldn't work, and you'll end up with the code doing some weird stuff on your terminal. So if it fails, then I'm going to if it fails, I'm going to clear whatever the person entered. I'm going to ignore whatever the person entered, and these two built-in functions in C++. And I'm going to count that invalid string that I had earlier. And then I'm going to send a again, and I'm going to continue that process until the user enters a valid number. Alright, here, now the next thing I want to do is to check to see whether a is 0. If a is 0, it's no longer a quadratic equation. It could be 0.1, it could be 0.00001. But if it's 0, it's going to be a problem. So I'm just going to check to see whether if it's a. If it's not a, please enter another number, and then it'll keep prompting that until and that's what the while does. It'll keep prompting until the user enters a valid int. Alright, and if the user enters a valid int, sorry, not a valid int, but a valid float, and if the user enters that, then we can break that cycle, and we can continue our code. Here I'm going to do root test. Now the reason is because if the results within the square root part of the quadratic function, if that is a negative number, it won't work. So I want to test to see whether if that's a negative number. Here I'm testing if this part b squared minus 4ac is less than 0. We're going to tell the user that, listen, this is not going to work. It's not going to have a solution. The root is going to be a negative number. And if not, then else we can continue. Now, here, this is why it won't work, is because the the equation does not cut the x-axis or touch the x-axis at any point. So you don't have any real zeros. You don't have any situation where an x value would give you 0. So we're just going to wrap up the code. Now once the test passes, that is, we have our we have a number that is greater than 0 within the square root, we can continue. Here we're going to set result 1 and result 2. Square root is always going to give you a two results, except if it just touches the x-axis, then it doesn't really give you that 2 results. But yeah, in this case it should give you 2 or in any case it should give you 2 results. Result 1, result 2, and then we're just going to count. We're just going to tell the user what those results are. Alright, so that's the code. I'm going to run the code here real quickly. Like you see, I was running it earlier, but anyway. Let's do 1, 1, and -1. So that's our, oh, I think it was, for golden ratio, I think it was 1, -1, -1. But yeah, let's do that again. 1, -1, -1. The results I got earlier was correct, but see here I entered C as 1 minus, right? That's why it'll give me this. That's why it'll give me that it doesn't have, because there's a piece of code that I'm telling the user this is what you entered it as, but I entered 1 minus. It should be 1, -1, -1, and there I have my golden ratio. Let's see if I enter a letter, that'll it'll just give me that. If I enter $, $sign, any other nonsense that the user wants to input, it won't work. So if I enter 3, I enter 2, and then I enter -5, it should give me the correct results. Alright, that should be the end of that.